Hi, I am Chris from Airwindows doing another live stream, and I'm exhausted. And the reason I'm exhausted is because this morning I have been grinding away on the whole spring cleaning dumpster thing that I've been in the middle of doing. And I knew that was going to happen, and I knew it was going to be a deal, because I have to finish doing that work before the people need to take it away. Although I learned today, and go ahead and ask Musictron. And I found out today that actually I have more days than I thought. So they're going to be coming and picking it up on Monday, rather than being super hasty to pick it up at the earliest available time. Certainly when I rented it, it didn't act like the people who had them were being made to pick them up at the earliest available time. But all said and done, by next week, I should be done with that. And I'll be doing a yard sale on Wednesday, most likely. And once I'm finished with those things, we can start getting back to normal in some kind of way. Well, some form of normal. For instance, you might notice something behind me. These are my electronic parts for making stomp boxes with. And I'm going to do my level best to pursue that. As you can see, I'm using planter peanut jars for it. So I need to get one more because there's space for exactly one more jar. Let's see, here is 170 MOSFETs. I have a rather large number of MOSFETs for designing things with. And that ain't even the transistor I intend to use for the first stomp box. But when I come up with a new stomp box, the first one sells for $100. And then every successive one of that particular one sells for 6.18% more than the previous. So while people are just beginning to notice this is happening, they're actually fairly affordable. And I'm hand building these things out of all the best parts and stuff. And it should be good. And then if anything becomes a wild, humongous success, well, then I'll have some help towards the next time I need to buy a dumpster. Now it's the anxiety of waiting for somebody to come and remove the previous one, after which it will be the anxiety of hauling all of the stuff that was too nice to go into the dumpster out and doing a yard sale that is actually another dumpster. So that might sound weird, but what a yard sale that is actually another dumpster is doing a yard sale, having perfectly decent stuff that's not garbage in it, but everything is I don't know, what do you give me? What do you got? $10, $5, $1. Cash, no credit. I don't take credit cards for this. But that ought to work. I should be able to clear a bunch of stuff out that's not garbage, but is superfluous and not doing me any good. It's not going to be much in the way of musical equipment, though. I tend to hang on to the musical equipment, even if it is garbage. But yeah, making progress with all of those things. And given that it is still the beginning of June, that seems legit. And it'll be there's a couple of things that'll be nice. One of them is I'm clearing out collapsed and rotted fence in my backyard that's only a wire fence anyhow, and is all overgrown with creeper vines and things, in the process of trying to obliterate and demolish the invasive vines that tend to take over my entire yard. And I don't do yard work, so it tends to sneak up and get me. And in the process of doing that, I liberated some relatively decent 2x4s that were really long. I'll read that in a moment, Musictron. And I'll read it aloud. And I also have another 2x4 that's very long already. And if I measure these things properly, I can put them up in my basement and screw them onto like the floor joists. And then dig little holes in the ground, because it's a dirt floor in that part of the basement, and sink the bottom of the 2x4s into like little concrete pits with the 2x4 in it, which ought to work. I can probably make that work. And then put shelf stanchions on there, and then have like some places to put shelves built in to the basement, and using up like pine boards that I also have in quantity. And then I can stack stuff up like off the dirt floor, not in the wet, and organize things a little bit, and it'll be a lot nicer. And this is not the time for doing that right now, because I can't do that right now, because currently what I'm doing is a live stream where I'll be doing some coding and answering questions, which I'm about to do. But also right now it's get the dumpster removed and deal with, my back hurts really bad because I'm exhausted and I've been running around carrying heavy things and stuff, which is fine, like it's good for me, but I'm paying something of a price for it. I'll sleep pretty good tonight, most likely. And then this coming week is get the dumpster removed and then do the yard sale thing. And I'm a shy person. I don't talk to people, so that's going to have its own special challenges. But it's the form of special challenges where people will give me money for things that are not garbage that I'm yard selling. And B, I'll see the end of a bunch of stuff that is doing me no good. There's all manner of things. Like there is one of those mixer things with a couple of different bowls and different sorts of attachments. I got to remember to put the attachments in with the bowls. Where it works, I just don't do that. Stuff like that. Something else, I forget exactly what it is. If I remembered what it was, it would be because I used the thing, and therefore that wouldn't be mysterious anymore. Anyways, why do some plugins, Musictron's asking, why do some plugins or DAWs seem to glitch while using macOS Accessibility Zoom? My answer is I don't know. I don't know why that happens. I could speculate a little bit. I'm not entirely clear on how Accessibility Zoom alters the behavior of the screen. Pretty sure I don't have it turned on myself. I wear glasses, so it's like I may end up needing something like that. I would guess, and it is only a guess, but I'm willing to guess, if plugins don't glitch when using regular, and this could, trying to think of why I sometimes get glitches, but I doubt it's for that reason. If Reaper or whatever, it might not necessarily, you mentioned Reaper, that's why I'm saying it. Reaper might be trying to get access to the hardware in a more direct way. Like it might be doing a thing where it's trying to read the position of the mouse directly, where it's supposed to be reading it through some form of interpolation or make a system call. And the system call is the call that on the one hand will feed in the information more slowly than you would want it, but on the other hand, it feeds in the information scaled to the zoom. So that would be the kind of thing that a DAW could do to make it not work properly with Accessibility Zoom, is if it's doing that particular thing. If it is expecting to be able to access the hardware directly, but you're supposed to access the hardware through an API that's able to scale and implement things like accessibility. which is really important. Like I rely on Consolidated for some of my accessibility deliverables because Bacon Paul has always had more sophistication in the ways of operating interfaces. And for that reason, he's got Surge XT, and he's got 6signs, and he's got Consolidated operating in such a way that it has accessibility features that my standalone plugins don't have. Or at least they don't have extra accessibility built in because they're too simple, they're too basic. So without further ado, and continue to ask questions if you would like, let's jump in to the world of coding. And it's anybody's guess as to whether I'm going to be able to get a lot done today. Although I suppose one thing I could do is attach the adapter to the speakers so that we can hear. That seems like that would be good. It is not going to be, probably not going to be the most insane productive of days, not like discovering all the new things, but I'm going to do some polishing on this stuff, which is not to say that I'm going to be able to get these things done. Like my guess is here, we go over here. These are going to be your options for the upcoming plugin this coming week. Also, Punchy Guitar should come up before Punchy Deluxe. But these are the ones that are ready. And I'm working on multiple ones that I've actually deleted out of this list because I need to do Dynamics 3 over again from scratch. And I need to do K-Rockstar over again because it is the first of ones that will correctly do 44.1K. It'll correctly do 1x rather than failing to do 1x, which is what they've been doing previously, and so people are getting larger reverbs at 1x. But yeah, what I'm looking at, and Purist Console might be challenging, although I could do it if people really badly want it. This is available. This is what's available for this coming weekend. Density 3, which is an update to Density, where the under density functions run a little bit better. It's using a thing that I could also bring out for PyWacket and so on, where, and see, I've got that available as some of the things I could be working on. But I worked out that the way I was calculating inverse density, I should have been subtracting rather than adding it. And when you do that, it blends better and works better. So there's an update to density that could come out. Longhand might be interesting. I don't know whether people are going to want that. Longhand is simply the sine distortion, but the sine distortion run at ultimate fidelity. The pure Taylor series expansion with no shortcuts. So if you want an ultra clean soft clip, maybe that's what's going to be interesting to people. Then you got LR Convolve. LR Convolve is the one where you get to basically gate a thing by the other thing. And Parallite EQ is just Parallite EQ. It's just a little EQ that you can have. It's I don't know why I haven't come out with it yet. I feel like it is not as many controls to it, but much like Smooth EQ 3 was a simpler, more accessible one, this is a simpler, more accessible Pair EQ. You got Punchy Guitar and Punchy Deluxe. We got Purist Console 4, and we've got X2 Bus. And X2 Bus is the slightly updated version of what I was doing for Console X2 for its specifically bus compressor as a standalone thing. And I don't know whether people are going to be wildly excited about any of these things, but one of them you get to have this coming weekend. So there we are. So possible reasons why people might not understand the glitch using macOS Accessibility Zoom issue. You could probably talk to Bacon Paul and he would listen. But then he probably understands it already. If people are doing an end run around the API for mouse input in order to get it to be more responsive, they're probably not going to want to acknowledge that they're doing something that sabotages other people's stuff, like that they're doing something that sabotages accessibility. So they won't want to talk because they won't want to acknowledge that they've done something that short circuits another functionality. Also, people sometimes don't want to talk when they don't know what it is. If they have no idea what any of that stuff is, they might be unwilling to respond. Like you asked me, but I get paid to say, I don't know, when I don't know. I'm a human being doing coding and thinking of new things for everybody. And part of the value proposition of Chris from Airwindows is if I don't know a thing, I will admit it. I will say it. I'm not the brightest programmer guy. In fact, I'm a very poor coder, but coding is what's being replaced by AI now, so it's like whatever. But yeah, like I will say when I don't know something, and it's normal for other people not to want to admit that. Because unless you have a positioning where like your honesty and your being not like all the other developers is your selling point, if you have to sell yourself on the basis of I'm as good as all the other developers, you're not going to want to admit fault. And that's kind of why things like that happen, Musictron. You're dealing with human beings. Even if you were dealing with AIs, you're still dealing with like distilled, blenderized human beings. If an AI starts acting like a human and showing human failings, it's because it's echoing human failings in its text, its body of information that it uses. That gets distilled and boiled down into behaviors. And it's not really a human being, but it's echoing behaviors many human beings have done. And that's so you may very well find it that you can't talk to an AI to get them to understand that issue either, because they're just acting like the humans that produce the training data. It's tricky that way. Anyways, here's something we could do a little more work on today. I can see how this goes. And in fact, I think we absolutely have every opportunity to finish this one off. So there were some thoughts I had around how this was working. You'll remember at the end of Tuesday, I got the behavior for this one working. So what I can do is open up something like a drum track maybe? Yeah. And so if we go for this one, it's the most recent one we've been working on. I have got it called various things and it's got various basic presets. The idea is this is meant to act like doing a vibey vintage sampler, but it's operating specifically on not so much bit crushing, but frequency crushing. It sounds kind of like this. So when I engage it, it immediately cuts back. And the bright and basis are affecting everything, although we're not undersampling it. And we can make it return to the base setting. or we can go for the raw form of what this is. And this is a frequency crush that is it's essentially doing the same thing as the Bezier filter thing, but it's not doing a Bezier filter, it's drawing a straight line between points. And if you shut it all the way off, it's silence. So if we have it doing deep bass sounds, tends to be a little grungy. This bright and basses in here are being operated before and after the derezzing. And it's meant to be heard with all of these things happening at once. There's a default setting for it. The thing I'd like to do is have it not just lose all of its volume the instant you turn the plugin on. And part of where the volume is going away is using bright. Bright is cutting volume back quite a lot, really. See, it ends up getting way quieter. Whereas I probably don't need to worry about basses. That is the high pass. So this will make things a little punchier. Or we can have it not engaged at all. This is because I got in a conversation on Reddit where people didn't understand that analog circuitry is loaded with high passes. You can't pass DC perfectly through normal analog circuits. So we can expect there to be like deep bass, yes, but it's going to be a little weirded out by the fact that there are so many high passes. And then the size of the high passes relates to how well the circuit is designed and how much money they were willing to spend on the crossover capacitors. But the end result is I have this loud sound, and then if you engage it, it's instantly way quieter. And I don't like that. So I'd like to do something about it. And funny thing, it feels kind of like the volume cut from engaging this is so extreme that I could add a volume boost based on what Bright's doing. Because it's really acting like it's making it way quieter. And this is the beginning part of your cutoff there. So the hope is I can set it up where we've got this dry sound from bypass, turn it on, and without getting like way louder, it gets like punchier from having this kind of sound rather than just very attenuated from having this kind of sound. Because in the wild we hear that stuff as, wow, what a great hip-hop album coming off of that sampler. Boy, it really rocks the house kind of thing. And we don't hear that stuff as, wow, it's so much quieter and not as bright as it should be. We don't hear things like that in that way. We generally hear it through a mix where it's been made loud. So, And I can fuss with some of these things just to make it a little bit more like this is no longer a high mid and a low mid filter. So even though I haven't changed all of the things about it, and I'm not going to, I can change some of the things about it to relate to what the thing is doing. So we can call that bright derez, and let me refer to what the other one was, basis derez. Told you I was tired. I'm stumbling all over my own fingers today. Then we can change this too. And we can change this too. And now they're labeled more along the lines of what they're supposed to do. And this thing up on the top, this is the straight lines version of the same thing. So what we're looking at here is there's a number of questions, and one of them is, do I already have a useful parameter here one way to find out. We can add one line of code to this guy. That's going to have a profoundly extreme effect. Even to the point maybe where I won't want it to be as extreme as that, but we'll find out. I can do another variable, which is the square root of bright trim, which would probably do a decent job of doing what I want. Honestly, if I can get anything to do what I want today, I'm going to consider it a win, because I'm tired from dragging stuff out of my basement and such. I have a special treat for the guy that is removing the dumpster. He is a Subaru fan. He complimented me on my car. As it happened, one of the things that I was throwing away was a Subaru steering rack, which I got mistakenly and went to some trouble to get for a previous Subaru that I had, the one that has just been replaced, which I thought I was going to be able to get it swapped out with a faster steering rack so that it would be more lively when you're driving it around. And I did not succeed in doing that because I got the steering rack okay, but it was hydraulic and my car was running on electric steering rack. So you couldn't actually swap it. And so I had this thing, brand new Subaru steering rack, perfectly good. I don't know anybody who has the correct kind of Subaru for that, and then also wanted a faster steering rack. And so it sat in my basement in its original box, bright and shiny and new. But as the years ticked away, so I've put it on top of the stuff in the dumpster, and I've told the dumpster company, because we know what guy is going to be coming through. It's the same guy. I told them what I had done. Like, make sure he opens the dumpster. I have a present for him. I have a Subaru part that he might be interested in, and so it says. And I like going on the basis of things like that. So speaking of doing things, let's see what this does. I might be completely out to lunch here. Or maybe it'll do exactly the right thing. But what I should have is same volume as bypass. And then it's supposed to be getting louder. I feel like that is not getting louder the way that I expected. Mind you, it's not terrible. But we're still losing all the amplitude here. Well, that's weird. Thought I would get more out of that. I could do it twice. I could do the same thing for... So here's what I'm thinking about. When I do that thing, what I'm doing is trying to scale it by the amount that the high frequency cut is rolling it off. And I'm clearly not succeeding, but that's what I'm trying to do with that. Trying to do input sample L divide by equals bright trim. Because bright trim is going to be a small proportion of what the filter thing needs to be. And maybe there's your problem. Maybe my problem is that it needs to be more of a function of 1 minus the deres trim is the amount of adjusting this entire process to make it line up neatly when we're cycling through things and then they have to go above 1 in order to loop around to 0 again. And there's multiple ways that this could be done. I could simply not do the trim adjustment and then have bright deres be less than 1 minus the trim adjustment or the deres. There are many possibilities. But I'm going to pursue some of my possibilities and see what they get me. I could try doing the same thing with bass trim. I do have a bass trim. So the thing that I'm also wondering about is could I operate off of basically the deres calculation instead? Is trim not a big enough correction? And that is possible. I mean, I can try it and see what I get. Ooh, also, this needs to happen twice. I've forgotten a thing that is significant. Namely, that I have 2 levels of this, but I'm only applying 1. There we are. So we might see a little bit more action out of this now. Might just. We can but try. So now I've added 2 corrections, but they're based on the trims rather than based on the dereses. And that's what I'm looking into here. I'm trying to make it so that there is an increase in punch from switching over to the sampled version, rather than just stuff gets quieter and weaker. I don't like stuff gets quieter and weaker. That's not too shabby. So here's dry. I can turn bypass on and off here. As I engage bright, it looks like we're getting what is actually the correct volume. It's just not as exciting because it's attenuation again. Mind you, it's close enough that maybe I could live with that, right? Like, it's definitely going way darker. Raw sound, muffled sound, and there's more beef to it. It's certainly way, way darker, and seems to be behaving itself fairly well on that basis. I mean, I could put in like one way I can make things louder is just straight up make them low bit. This is actually using a technique where we're intentionally just using the capacity for frequency crushing rather than trying to use literal bit crushing. So now I'm wondering, can I do a boost factor based on DRes? I've just done boost factors based on bright and basis. But we don't have one based on DRes yet. I'm also wondering whether I want to come up with a... none of those other sliders are doing anything. I'm going to take them away before the end of the day. There's a couple, 3 hours left in the day. By the end of the day, those are going to be gone. The only reason they're still there is I haven't decided whether I need more controls on this one. Because people always want more controls. And I don't always give you more controls and you want more controls. But nevertheless, people do always want more controls. So, one further thing to try. We're going to see whether we can't get it to be Well, louder for one. And we're going to doctor that way. And then we do divides are not very efficient. I could consider ramping all this up a bit. But I'm going to see how this works first. You'll notice I don't often build in divides into my stuff. There's a reason. So now if we're doing a divide equals that trim, and again, this is another stepped calculation, which is where I get trim. So X is going to be like however much smaller you need to get in order to have it be exactly one DRes unit smaller than getting to 1. I don't know if that made any sense. It made sense to me. Point being, if I can make it work, that's the important part. We shall see. Because again, here's how this rolls, is I'm trying to do specific things out of this. And I have to go by my own take on here is DRes 4. Hey, Grins. Yeah, I am exhausted, but I have successfully filled the dumpster full of everything that needs to go into it and nothing that shouldn't go into it. And turns out they're not going to be able to remove it tomorrow. I thought I had to scramble in order to get everything done by tomorrow. But I guess I get to have tomorrow off then. And there's pretty much no filling anything else in the dumpster, although I bet I can. There's a lot of space for sticking things in empty spaces in there. And then with a bit of luck on Monday, they will be by to remove it. And on Wednesday, I will attempt to do a yard sale that is secretly a dumpster. And of course, when I say that, what I mean is I'm going to do a yard sale, but mostly it's for getting people to take things away from me. And I won't be too fussed on what they offer me in return, other than it has to be money. I'm not going to barter for other junk. No. But I'm not yard selling any actual junk. It's all like some form of okay stuff. Alrighty. Here is... Oh, absolutely, yeah. Here is DRes 4 as it currently exists in its default settings. And this is with a boost to the DRes part as well as everything else. And yeah, I mean, I do exercises on purpose just to stay fit, so it's not doing me any harm running around being that active. I just hurt a bit is all. A little sore, I'm a little tired. Does seem as if I have a working sampler style thing. The catch is that this is not a actual low bit device. It's just focusing stuff in a frequency crush range. So it's like an old school sampler, but at the same time, it's not really. And then here is my final degree of boost. Ah, I see. Okay, so that's about the loudest I can get out of it. I think it's shaping up pretty well. Looks like this is more my sweet spot for having it actually be a little bit boosty. We could try this. We could default to 1/4 and 3/4. I feel like that does a pretty respectable job of like focusing and heightening things. And it's definitely a de-resed. See, if we do this, and then we engage the de-res part, we can get all manner of low-res shapes. Because when we do this, what's happening is it's hanging out being roughly the same volume. But what we're doing, let's find a nice hot snare hit. Actually, I know exactly where to find nice hot snare hits. Here's a series of them. Maybe the kick is better for that, honestly. Ooh, there's one. There's one. We're doing a thing of connecting line segments, but then there's a Bezier filter, both reducing the amount of aliasing in a peculiar and unorthodox way, but then also softening where the line segments actually sit. So it's drawing straight lines, but it's not letting there be corners. We compare it with the raw signal. The raw signal is both pointier and curvier. We're at 96K, so we don't really get much pointiness there. But maybe as we scooch over to the very end, we saw a little bit of the high frequencies in there. That's the very last hit, so I can go and return to it. And if I do this, and de-res it, but allow it to be full crunchy, we get this, which is line segments with corners on them. And so that is generating ultra high frequency stuff, but it's not so much aliasing as it is just synthesizing points. Back in the olden days, there were CD upsamplers that did stuff like this. The idea was put back the high frequencies that were out there. Come to think of it, there could be some amusing tricks to play here as well. Remains to be seen. But yeah, you can literally see where I am doing connected line segments. And you see the sharp points that those make. And they are not so high frequency that you're really going to get much in the way of like intersample peaks off of it, because to get intersample peaks, what you have to do is have widely disparate sample positions, and this does not have that. So you've got almost more motion there. And we're deresing a lot. We might even be able to make it add more. Like if we're doing this, what do we get? No darkening, but let's drop that just below 1 to make sure that it engages. And see, did it make high frequencies where there were none before? Let's find out. I'm going to say no, that does not look to me like there are high frequencies that weren't there before. But maybe I just need to dial it in. Maybe it's trying to make line segments between literal samples. If we're trying to make line segments between every 2 samples, we're not going to see much happening. It's going to act basically the same. Like maybe some points will be pointier, but mostly that's not going to be a thing. So back into dres. And let's see what happens as we scooch it further down until we start hearing edge on things. I can hear the hi-hat. And I think it's affecting things there, so let's see what it did. I do believe that made things louder. Let's see what we got. We got some degree of boosting there. That's actually made stuff noticeably louder. Did it make any of my points become more pointy than before? Don't know. See, the idea there is downsampling it and getting it to fill in these points in a particular way. The fact that it sounds basically the same, but is giving me obvious clips here, moments like this. Those got a lot hotter than they were supposed to. I could try, and again, this is without using any Bezier filtering. It is definitely making stuff louder. Ooh, we could do 1/3 and 2/3. At 96K, that is definitely a specific degree of sharpening. And it's giving us more peaks and different. Let's see if they seem pointier than expected. Not especially. We're not really getting wild exaggerations on this. But all the same, it does have a certain thing going on. There, that's a loud cymbal sound. What's that look like? Oh, and this one, okay, so this one we are hitting the cymbal before the actual drum, which is basically me playing sloppily, but I'm happy about it now. Technically, that's a snare hit, so it's like the snare is being swung. The snare is coming in slow, and it's on purpose, but it's producing this effect. Cymbal first, snare after. And when we go and look at that snare, or look at that cymbal, we see that we managed to put points on the cymbal as if we were a upsampler. So that's kind of neat. We could have this being like a synthetic cymbal generation. Oh, that was so fast you can't even hear it. So that's a cymbal attack that's brighter than it's really supposed to be. Also, what the heck is this? Is this... That's a hat. Okay, so we've got a piece of a crash as an attack, and then a hat attack blending into it, so it's a little complicated, but this is the kind of thing that we can do with this process. That's neat. And using that as part of the beat, so that's without any filtering. That's just the raw line segment approach. So then if I was to undo all of this and do it over again, but this time with the Bezier stuff in there. Okay, that's immediately darker than it should be. How about only enough bright to affect it, only enough bass to affect it. Oh, already darker than I need. So that's pretty punchy. If we compare it to dry, what we get is a significant change in the tonality of it. So this is bypass. As soon as we engage it, the hat gets coarser and more punchy. It does sound more like a sampler this way. So one of the things I was thinking about, and I think I've got this sorted, like this looks like it's the way it needs to go for becoming the end result. I am of a mind to do the fairly large amount of work that it will take to build in this form of derez on all the reverbs coming forwards, perhaps including Rockstar. Okay, Rockstar. I took it out because I was like, let's just do things where there's not a lot of overriding of sample rates and stuff. But, there is a usefulness to it. So what I am now wondering is, what is the word that isn't derez for only derez in a stepped way? Because it's going to act differently. When I use a derez control, since I'm basically the only one doing them, what it always means is I'm doing Bezier-based undersampling. And so I'm running a process at a lower rate than sample rate and filtering around it and making it still sound nice. And when we go one direction, we are stepping downwards and applying it with less and less resolution. So it's kicking in at a lower and lower sample rate, but it's matched to that stepped calculation where it's going to sound bigger and it's going to be a little grungier and crunchier. This distinguishes that from the Bezier filtering. But it's not quantized, is it? It doesn't have anything to do with amplitude. Quantized is literally the opposite thing. So yeah. What I'm looking to do, if this works, and I can try it in Rockstar and see if that pleases anybody, is a control that if you crank it all the way up in one of the reverbs, you get the sound as intended. I want to produce the sounds as intended. But then as you dial it back, you get to drop it to 0. And for this, what you get is this, outside of any Bezier filtering. It's doing a nice clean job of it too. And in fact, if we have it at a medium-high frequency, then we get to we overdrive a bit. It's adding some punch to it while maintaining an equivalent to parent volume, is how that's working. But then we can extend it farther than that quite easily. So there's going to be a name for this. There's going to be a name for this behavior. The behavior of it's always running smoothly. It's not going to throw in any of that cursed digital quality. Unless you call this cursed digital quality, which you could. It's definitely something else. We can set it up to be essentially, if we do this, we're not even doing frequency crushing anymore. We're just using it as a bandpass. And you can make it be this type of bandpass. But then if you derez, then you start getting something else happening. You know what might be amusing? As long as I'm wrestling with this and I don't have to actually get anything to work, we could jump into Rockstar and throw another control at it. We could throw a control to double position, that also starting at 1. And it becomes a tedious but fairly simple process to update these in the belief that they're all going to have 4 controls rather than only 3. Meaning you'll be able to dial the size of everything down, which has its own uses. Honestly, although I'm not thrilled with having these more realistic ones, as the reason for this is, if I remember correctly, somebody was actually asking for, can I scale down Cyber City? You know, I move forwards through things, so that's doing that over is not going to happen unless eventually everything changes so much that I end up with a Cyber City 2 and we just roll with it. But if we instead and this is going to be awkward and cumbersome, but don't mind me. I'll get there. I'm going to come up with a name that does both this and what DRes is doing. And I shouldn't have to change anything in here. But I got to do a little maintenance work for all of this over here. And then I will have that maintenance work to do, if this works, for literally dozens of other plugins that are set up to come out, because it's doing the overall template of it. And they're all basically ready to go, but if I update literally all of them, and there are ways I can do that and it won't be too horrible, but I'm doing it by hand here. There. And there's a paramd. This should be the same. And then that would be the new control. So we'll have them go in sequence. And then we'll see what happens if we do this. Because you see it has to start at 1. But then it scales down from there. And let's find out what we get out of this process. Might just work first time. Might want some further fussing with. Also, we need this to be here. Let's see if we can open another window, go to desktop, and sort of find our way to the relevant thing. It's going to be there somewhere. Unless it's not. Ooh, no, it's not. It came out. Or it didn't come out, but it might just as well have come out because I have a built VST version of it, meaning it's sitting in my Airwindows folder instead. Sorry. I'm doing the best I can with all this. Here we go. Not you. but you. There. So the reason this is getting rebuilt again is that's not a bad idea, Grins. We could call it that. Except for it's not going to seem like dust in the reverbs though. But I like the association. That's got an association with Pulse Boutique, because Pulse Boutique is loaded with sounds like that, and the Dust Brothers did that. Let's see, where the hell is my folder? Where's my damn folder? Also, you guys need to beat it. Where's my damn folder? There it is. So here we are again. But now we got another control, Drees Nuts. And this is at the size of the reverb. And that was positioned, so that's why that didn't do anything. That's against the back wall. That's against the front wall. This should do something. So what I'm shooting for is something along the lines of derez, but a special word to mean this is us just scaling the size of everything down. And I had an idea around those lines for a few weeks ago. I don't remember what it was that I wanted. I mean, you could call it down. Going down. We could call it down. Down res has 7 letters to it. I could call it down res and simply use that, and that's the same numbers as in dry wet with the slash through it. So 2 things to try. Firstly, let's see how that rolls. And the idea is at full crank, you have not down-resed, and then everything from that point onwards is more of a down-res than you had. And then let me see how I'm processing that. So I am scaling that in such a way that you can swoop it down in a way that maybe is not what I'm thinking of for the reverbs. So I feel like that basically works. In fact, I have exaggerated the downscaling of it to where you can always drop it to a really crunched version. Downres is working for me fairly well. It's basically the same thing as dres, except for it's only at full crank or down from that. And that might do the job. So with this one, it's always a little bit twitchy, and you pull it back a fair bit before it starts to kick in. Now, there are numerous ways I can go about this, and one of them is to just automatically have it go from like 0 to 10. The trick is you're sweeping through a series of downreses that are at different sample rates. So if we're at different sample rates and you're at like 44.1K, your first available downres is like at 11K. You're snapping from 22K to 11K in one step. If you're at 96K, your first available downres is higher than the audio frequency band, but it'll all end up producing the same result, which is why the dres for this is probably correct, but I don't know that the one that's best for the reverbs will be the same. Because the watchword, like the way this works and the way I'm sort of struggling over all of this, and it's been a hard day and I'm tired and sore and trying to do as much as I can during the day, including this reverb work that I'm doing. It's somewhat informed by me grappling with the world of people doing AI for everything now. So what's going to happen and what I'm actively working on at the moment to kind of try to address that, what's going to happen is people go, oh, hey, now what about that, but a graphic EQ on just the downsampled part of it. Okay, now let's add compression and expansion on both the dry signal, and also let's do it on the downsampled part, but one in front of the downsampled and one behind the downsampled part. And people will just do all of these things just because they can prompt them. And everything will become completely unworkable because it'll be drowning in bizarre behaviors that only apply to one person. What I'm trying to do with these, especially concerning the reverbs, is get stuff where they are approachable and people can get awesome results out of them immediately by reading what the controls say and doing what the controls seem to apply you should do. So I got my downres here for dres4, and there's a bright control, which is the filter part of it, and that's also going to manipulate the way that it goes into aliasing, if you do have it going into aliasing. And basis is playing the role of analog circuitry in a rail sampler. It's playing the role of a vintage sampler such as people want to have automatically does a bunch of high passes just as being an analog circuit. And so what it's doing is it's hyping up the lows in a certain kind of way, because it's running a couple of stages of Bezier filtering, both on input and on output, and adjusting the gain to cover for the filtering that's being done. So the idea is you can expect to run a, in fact, I can even do a little testy thing, but I'd first like to jump into the K-Rockstar and see what I can do here around one of the things I was thinking of. Because I've got this set up to do this. And if you swoop it from 1 to a lower setting, it will indeed go down. So I'm game with that. But for the reverbs, I would like to have it. That's not the reverb. Show me the reverb. Here we go. I would like to have it not simply swoop in the way that... I feel like this should be the bright control. Above them all production. I can be reasonably confident that I'm not, but have fun. If you need somebody to be an old man with a white beard acting nice to you, I can serve that role. That pleases me. You can do that. So let's see what we were trying to do. I was trying to make some sense of all of this and not getting very far with it, but here's one of the things I was doing. This is a filter. It's a DRes filter, and it's 1 minus power param b to the power of 2 times 4. That's maybe not exactly what I had in mind. I know I was trying to do a particular thing. I'll see. Bear with me. I'm going to struggle my way on through this and see whether I can get something out of it. So this is the one that I was just looking at where I was like, no, not this way. And this is the one that I'm trying to stick in the downres control, and it's one of my reverbs. And I'm going to want to go through, if I can get this to work, I'm going to want to go through and alter all of that stuff, which I can do in a search and replace, by the way. So if this works, I could have this done for all of them by the end of the day. That would be kind of cool. But what I'd be doing is, well, some of this stuff needs to run custom. But what I'd be doing is basically this. I need to come up with a way of having DRes so that maybe I make it available for... So what I'm talking about is coming up with a new control, and the new control needs to work in a distinct and new way. The way it's working is I am taking a control that goes from 0 to 1. If it's at 1, it's at full res. As you start scooching it down, you start getting subdivisions of where it was working. And this very specifically is relative to overall scale, where if you're running at a high sample rate, not only does it sound the same as running at 44.1K, but it is also not using as much processing power as if you had to run the entire reverb every sample. That's the whole point of this downscaling thing. So the way of making the reverb act and sound the same, running at 96K as it would, or roughly, as it would at CD rate, is by undersampling it. That's why I have a category called undersampling on my website, where you can go and look at all of the different plugins that use this technique. So if we have a new name for a thing, in fact, we can even specifically name it that. That changed everything. On the other, if I do that, then I have to change it for literally all of the other plugins too. But we can walk through that if it's worth it. This is the part that's giving me a problem. So there's a variety of things that I can do with it, and I'm just kind of trying to arrive at what's best. It would be kind of neat to set it up so that at full crank, it is the normal rate. And then at like 0.9, it's one step below that, and 0.8, it's one step below that, basically like an integer adjustment, because this does become an integer control. The problem with that approach that is leading me to stop and not know what I'm doing, the problem with that approach is I could do it, but then the difference between like 4 integer steps of down res from 44.1K and 4 integer steps of down res from 96K, or even worse, 192K, those are very different things. So it's like that's not gonna work. If I just stick to modifying the floating point number coming in, it goes from 0 to 1. And if down res, which started out as dres, is like 0.1, that means, oh, we're running at a much slower speed, like we're generating a new reverb sample like 1 in 10 samples or more. If I do a power function, this is what I do on some of my filter plugins. Like if I do that, what it's going to do is allow me to sweep up to the maximum setting, which would also incorporate like if we weren't doing overall scale that way, but instead this way, what would happen is settings in the middle of the control would act about the same. But this is what I do when I want to have the sweep of the control act differently for different sample rates. So that if you are at 44.1K, you can kind of linearly sweep from high frequencies down to bass, and it covers the range of the control. And then if you're at 96K, you can still sweep up to the maximum of the sample rate. It's going farther then. But the range of the sweep is going to be about the same. It's just that the audible frequencies are going to sit more or less in the middle, or more in the middle than they were before. And in doing that, you can set it up so that the 0 to 1 control, 1 being at the actual sample rate, still covers the audible range in a relatively reasonable way. Now it's making it so that it doesn't actually work exactly the same each time. We're not doing a thing where we're mapping the same adjustment onto the control each time. Because when I'm doing filters like that, I often want to run at a high sample rate, but not be forced to stop filtering at 20K. If you made everything be, this is a filter, and when you turn it all the way up, it goes up to 20K and stops. That's very straightforward. That's scaling the whole thing according to overall scale, and then the sweep winds up being exactly the same. But if you want to be able to sweep the control up to the actual new sample rate limit, you do something like this. That's not going to make any sense to what we're doing. If instead downres is a power factor, what's going to happen is that a setting in the middle of it, like 0.5 coming in, is going to turn into 0.25, or even more so. We could have it turn into 0.5 coming in immediately becomes a really small frequency. What that's doing is making the low frequency positions on this, the low res positions on this, be up in the middle of the control. It's giving you lots of controls over the deepest, bassiest stuff, but then all of the high frequency stuff is crammed against the top edge of the control. And as soon as you crack it off of full crank, it's immediately way darker. So here's the flip side of this, and I'm going to see whether this is maybe what I'm looking for. And we'll call it cubed, power of 3. So doing this, what's happening is I'm putting the sweep on things again. I'm changing the way that the hey Samurai, doing okay. It's been a tiring day, but we're getting some useful stuff done. What we're doing here with the 1 minus the 0 to 1 and a power factor on that, and then 1 minus the result, is we're switching the taper. Instead of everything leaning towards the basiest, lowest frequencies, what this is doing is for everything that we're actually doing, and we're incorporating overall scale here so that the max is going to be neatly assigned to top speed. Why is it float and not just int, or only float for the ones that are required to be float? Floats are what's coming in as control settings. And we're ending up assigning some of them to be ints, like Bez fraction is an int, but then it's turning back to double because what we're doing is we're dividing double precision numbers into even amounts of spaces. So what I should have done here, and I'm fairly confident I did, is adjust it, set it up to where the default sound at full res is still the same. This is the Rockstar Hall. So this is the new hotness that's coming out. I'm just trying to maximize everything that I can with it. Hilarious that position is the same number of letters as downres. It just takes up way less size. And then as we sweep this, it doesn't do as much because the idea is you don't necessarily want to sweep it all the way down to nothing. But yeah, look what we've got. We've got most of the range doing absolutely nothing. And then we can sweep down to nothing. This is the dry sound, and mathematically we're doing a linear interpolation between this and the reverb. That's what dry wet do, typically. And typically it is a linear interpolation rather than some other kind of blend. So that's kind of neat. I feel like what I've done, however, is it's gone too far in that direction. So I maybe don't even want to have it tilted this way, but if I do, clearly I don't need to do a power of 3 to do this. So that would be me building it again. I can maybe bring in something else. Here's a nice one. So OK Rockstar, the downres control as used in one of these more realistic style reverbs Seems like below 0.5 is where you're stepping away from full res. And then as we get larger and larger as you approach 0. The idea of down res is that you can go real close to 0. One little check that I'd like to make, because down res I feel should be comprehensible, understandable. And it's going to matter whether people are on low sample rates or not. So for doing the sample rate, now we're running the reverb at every sample. Then when we change down res, it's harder to get to the down res section. You can do it, you're allowed to do it, but it feels like 0.3 is the first place at which it kicks in. And you get to do exactly the same thing. And there you have it. So the thing that I'm now thinking, all right, you have a great day too. I'm now wondering whether maybe I don't even need to be doing what I was doing. Or alternately, whether there's a way of doing this that one is always full res and everything else incrementally goes from one step down to beyond that. Like, that makes logical sense to me. I like the idea of down res being crack it off of full crank and you're immediately into that down res zone, whatever it happens to be. So what would that be if we were to do that? Oh, and I'm going to tell it not to save the changes. So now we're getting somewhere. I do not know. Don't mind me, just staring at the wall. So if the travel of this control should be useful settings at all times. I don't know if I need to scale it the way that I'm scaling it. When I do it this way, what ends up happening is the first step down is way the hell over towards 0.3 at 44.1K. There is a statement that I can do. And I'm typing it wrong. And I'm figuring it out and struggling more in a little bit, but that's fine. So basically what we're looking at here is a kind of frequency control, and it has me wondering whether there is a usefulness in doing upsampled reverbs, in being able to jump it up from what the target's going to be. Because that means if you're running at some really high sample rate, you get to have ridiculous chipmunk reverbs. And I don't know whether that's what I'm going to want. Seems like a bit of a rough deal to be like, here is your chipmunk reverb. It sounds terrible and it is tiny and small, but you don't get to use it if you're at 44.1K. That seems rude. So I don't like that idea. But what I'm shooting for is some kind of check where I can make it kick in the nearest available downsample. So I'm going to have to think my way through this. Let's start by, if we have the regular power function, what the regular power function does is it makes all the bassy ones move to the middle of the control. That's not what I want. What I've got is all of the high frequency ones move to the middle of the control, but what that's caused is a situation in which the 44.1K version does not downsample until it's at like 0.3. This is not how you want a control to be laid out. You don't want the control to be laid out in such a way where nothing happens until you turn it almost all the way off. That nobody's going to like that, including me. I wouldn't like that one bit. So our first thing we're going to do is get rid of the power function entirely. And then we think about what kinds of values we can get. So our problem is if we do this, and let's doctor it a bit. If we do that, then we're guaranteed that it is always at 1. 1 is our setting that makes it be the normal frequency range. That 1 is our setting where it's going to be compensated by overall scale. That may be the thing I need to look into here. Changing so many damn things around, it ain't even funny. Okay, and we've already got this covered. There's fmin, and min means it doesn't get to become larger than 1. Currently, what we've got here is if it was scaled up, you'd be able to go to smaller rooms at the larger size, which is, I'm looking to not. And you know, we can override. We can make it so that it doesn't actually scale any further down. Remembering, of course, at 44.1K, overall scale is literally 1. So what we're doing is now the same as it was when we started, but in a different way. It's all been rearranged. Everything is all rearranged now. And the idea was for it to kick in when at literally 1, it's at full crank. Tick it off of literally 1, and you immediately get the next downsize. So what's that going to involve? Well, the math is getting a little bit mathy for me. Because logically what I'm looking to do, down res, so this is just a clamp. This part's just a clamp. This is restricting it to a value that's larger than 0, but then also a value that is less than upsampling the reverb. It's less than having it run faster than real time. This needs to get adjusted by best fraction. So what do I mean when I say it needs to be adjusted by best fraction? So basically my vision for this is as we step along it, and I feel like that first step is the one that matters to me. And if we are doing it the way we're currently doing it, and we're at 44.1K, we're going to get our first downsample at exactly 0.5. But if we're let's run this experiment. Let's run this experiment and literally see what it actually does. Because maybe then I can wrap my head around it a little better. I know what it needs to do. We'll open this up again. We'll fire it off again. No down res. We'll hear it doing its thing. And it's at 96K. It will bring in a down res at around 0.7. Now, if I was running it at the same rate that the top was always literally 1-to-1, that would have kicked in at about 0.5. But running it like this, it kicks in at around 0.7. The goal is to make it that no matter what sample rate you choose, take it off of 1, and you immediately get 1 step down, and then from that point on, you continue to get more steps down. Like there's another. But you'll notice it's not exactly at 0.5. None of them are going to be quite like that. And you can take it down this far if you want. But the goal is always to have 1 be full crank, and then you take it the slightest amount off of 1, and it's going to be half speed again, or whatever the nearest available. Like, the deal is at 192K, it's still going to run fairly efficiently, but everything's going to be Bezier reconstruction. And then at 192K, you have even less of a change from the 1, because there are even more ranges of adjustment between this and the nearest available. Like one's this, and then downres immediately gets you this, whatever it happens to be. I can even demonstrate that. Let's literally do that. It's going to make the computer sad, but I believe it'll still run. Boom. 192K. K Rockstar. Because we're not running at literally every sample, it's going to sound about the same. But check it out. At higher sample rates, you have more options for slight downresing. This is what I'm trying to make happen, and will be the case for literally all of the reverbs, meaning no matter what you do, you'll be able to do that kind of thing, and the 1.0 is exactly the point at which it snaps into focus at the intended resolution. So here's the deal. Here's why I'm doing this. Notice how this is making its change at around 8.6? And then from there beyond, we get more and more options. And we're switching back and forth like this. If we switch this whole thing over to 44.1K, that whole behavior goes away. Watch. Nothing. Until we cross 0.5. And then from this point on, we get that same kind of behavior where we get more and more steps down. So what I need to do is readjust this so that all of these are scaled, that this transition is at 1.0. Whether it be 44.1, 96, 192, whatever. the first step to having it be downresed should be taking it off of 1. And if I do that, that will drag the downsample for 44.1K from 0.5 up to here, at which point the next available one is going to be around 0.6 or so. It's still going to be a fairly coarse division, but downres will behave in such a way. And this is not something I've done with any previous plugin, though, so which is why I want to get this right. With all previous dereses, you were stuck sort of dealing with it as it went. So at 1.0, you had it, and then if you were downresing using the stepped control, you had to go to like 0.5 to get any action out of it at 44.1K. And all the other ones would give you a result much quicker because none of them were making this compensation I'm talking about. And the compensation, again, is you got to make this transition happen at 1. So let's see what we can do. And we'll tell it not to save the changes we just made. So if downres was get parameter param_c plus 1, that would give us our result. But it wouldn't necessarily do what we want for any other sample rate. Or would it? Okay. So get parameter param_c at 4x, let's say. Overall scale would be times 4 at 4x. It's a double, but that's fine. We'll make sure that the precedence of operations is good. Wouldn't it be adorable if that was literally the only thing? I bet it's not. I bet it's not, but it wouldn't be cute if it was. So normally, if we were, so what if plus 1 divided by overall scale? Would that give us the result? I mean, I suppose we could find out. That's our maximum. So we're limiting it to that as a maximum possibility. So if we did this, right, 1 is going to end up being equal to 1. That's about the most obvious statement anybody could make, right? Guess what? 1 equals 1. If it is, I'm staring at it and being like, no, it's still not right. It's still not right. What am I doing? Downres should be limiting things to our optimal maximum amount. Then, if we're at 2x, or roughly 2x, 1 plus 0.5 divided by 2. That makes our top setting be 0.75. And then it could, well, I guess we just try it out and find out what happens. In theory, we just did something. I don't know whether I need to fuss with it further to get it to do what I want. I do, however, think that it's going to work properly for the 44.1K case. Let's see if I just did a jump shot or hole in one or whatever. Nailed it first time out. Again, the desired behavior is kick in a down sample instantly upon taking it from 1. That's not done it. In fact, it's made it considerably worse. Yay! That is literally the opposite behavior I'm looking for. It has way more range of adjustment in here now. Okay, so I knew something was up with that. Huh. Already. Well, we're dropping down res, whereas maybe we need to be clamping it. Over there is clamping it. So if we didn't divide it, like, let me undo from there. Actually, I've already got it loaded up, so that's fine. So if I'm correct that I'm doing literally the wrong opposite thing, but it might still work with a small change, what's going to happen is if I turned this to 192K and then run this again, in theory, this will make that problem even worse. I was trying to make down res kick in a different way, but instead all it did was that its ability to shift to a lower res was over here. For 192K, the ability to shift to a lower res should be like way over here somewhere. Let's find out. There we are at our normal res. Oh, nope, that one kicked in earlier. But, remember how originally it was at 0.8, now it's at 0.6. Okay, so we have established that we went backwards. So, what if instead downres gets clamped, but we don't divide it by overall scale first off? We're just pushing it past 1.0 every single time, but we're pushing it by a smaller amount each time. We've not even tried the 1x case yet. So we should still be able to get to the top sample rate case. And honestly, given that downres is where we started at, but plus something, well, I shouldn't speak too soon. I'm speaking like it's going to work, and I wonder very much about that. 2x. Oh, hi. Okay, now we can't do a thing. Downres literally stopped working. So that was a swing and a miss. Wow. Normally I hope to be able to do things and understand what I'm doing, but clearly what I'm trying to do is so far out of the range of what people normally do that I'm lost at sea. Rather than adding, clearly we need to multiply by something. So 1 plus 1 gets us 2, at which point 0.5 is our, no, that makes no sense. Well, if we're adding something and the target is for (0.5) to end up being 1 at 1x. And then a bunch of other stuff is going to happen and be different for all these other ones. What we're going to be looking to do to have it match 1x exactly, and 1x at all possible sample rates means at every point our maximum number here is 1 divided by overall scale. So if we're at 2x, our maximum number is 0.5. We've got a clamp there, which makes sure that that's what it ends up being. But we're trying to skew it in such a way that the instant you drop below 1, we snap to the next lower one. So I feel like rather than having downres be plus anything related to overall scale, because all that's doing is that's removing the ability to scale it at all. Instead, we multiply not by 1 divided by overall scale, because that's going to make everything be smaller, but 1 plus 1 divided by overall scale. What's that going to do? That means if we're at 1x, then the number we're multiplying by is 2, meaning that 0.5 ends up effectively being 1. And that means we snap to the lower setting as soon as we come off 1. In theory, that should do that, although I might have it slightly wrong. But then for the higher sample rates, like 192K, the switch is much closer to the maximum because it's 4x. So there are many other gradations between the target sample rate. At 4x, our maximum downres is 0.25. We have it always doing that because we have it going up to full scale and not beyond. And then the instant you come off of 1.0 on the control, it's doing its next available downsample and then going from there. So downres get param c times, it's not going to end up being 2. It's going to end up being closer to 1, but it's not going to be as big as that. It'll be 1 plus 1 divided by 4. So 1.25. And will that make it so that downres 1 times 1.25 end result being 1.25? Whoa up, hang on, slow down. We can't simply feed in 1.25 and then clamp it to 1 divided by overall scale and get useful results. That's just going to make it so that it's really hard to get a hold of. Basically what we're trying to do is take this 1.25 and then divide it again back down to effectively what the target would be. So we're trying to take the end result of this, where we're adding a smaller and smaller amount to percentage each time. We're adding a smaller and smaller increment to each overall scale, to each downres. And then it looks like we got to scale it back down again. So what's that going to look like? Well, we can put everything in more parentheses. So if we're scaling it back down again, here's our limit. And here's our taking the thing that pushes it slightly beyond the limit and clamping it to being the limit. There. And when overall scale is literally 1, much of this does nothing, nothing, nothing. But we're going to see, this looks very messy, but we're going to see whether it did what I wanted. I mean, DRes, thankfully, is not bad. Oh, okay. See you later, Chris. Chris Mills going to work. Hey, I'm already at work. In a half an hour, I get to thaw out taco stuff. Today is going to be the street taco day. Today is going to be the day that I didn't get to get the soft corn tortillas that I wanted, and so I have to go with these smaller, I'll probably make 4 of them for that purpose, these smaller flour tortillas, and I'll see how those go. Maybe they'll be good. Who knows? Maybe they'll be awesome. They might be the best thing ever. We shall see. Did I copy that? Well, I did now. So I know I've got a clamp for my maximum setting. If this is working properly, we're going to get the correct sound. I will start right off with a 44.1K to see if it's doing its job. Down res. Not kicking in. Yeah, do you understand how this is literally worse than I wanted? What's that about? Okay, so we're trying to scale this up. And making down res be multiplied by 2 is not giving me what I wanted. I don't understand why not. I feel like it should be doing what I want. I mean, 1 is... I feel like this should be doing what I want. I don't understand why it is not. I could try the 96K version or the 192K version just as the extreme opposite. See what happens if we do that. So the hope here is whatever the heck this thinks it's doing, at a down res of literally 1, I should be getting the original sound. Seems about right. And then the instant I move it off of here, it should be instantly dropping to the next one down. Not only is it not doing it, it's kind of doing the opposite. See, if I'm running it normally, that'd be kicking in up here. And then again, if I run it at 44.1K without going to all of this trouble. What happens is the entire top half of the control is useless. Going to all this trouble, the top 3/4 of the control is useless. So it's still acting like some part of this is the direction I'm trying to go, and yet it's always doing the opposite of what I want with it. That's irritating. I'm able to clamp it, fine. I'm able to clamp it to be limited to maxing out, but I'm not able to move it in the direction I need. Because what needs to happen here is for it to be at full sample rate, just like this, and then the instant I take it off of 1, it gives me a half, and then from then down. So there's a problem. Well, 1 divided by 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Downres of get param c times 2 let's lose this. Let's see what it does. Let's lose all this stuff and see what it does. Honestly, I'm confounded. I thought the multiply thing would get me what I wanted. I really did. I so thought that was going to do it. Let's just play with some other stuff then. If we simply do not apply overall scale to this at all, what should happen is that, like, this is me now experimenting with this mess. I mean, if I can just leave this off and then it will act normally. I don't have to implement this new thing. It's just that I want to implement this new thing and I want to implement it in a particular way. So, if we just have downres be 0 to 1, what should happen is at 44.1K, it will drop to a lower frequency at exactly 0.5. At 96K, it's going to refuse to do anything of the sort until I lower it even farther. Let's test that assumption. That's clearly an assumption. Like, if I'm not scaling this in the slightest, here's what should happen. We will get a drop to the next lowest at 0.5. Confirmed. And then then since we are not making any other sort of correction, we're just clamping it, the next one down should kick in down here somewhere. Let's find out. Yep. So it's around 3.3. Didn't expect that, but it's true. So what I'm trying to do is make it so none of this happens. All this space that does nothing. Trying to make that go away. And then if I crank it to 192K, it'll go even farther in that direction. Well, still running on the old machine because all this undersampling is simply compensating. So we're clamping the maximum amount to the amount that we need. And see, it's even farther. So let's see if we can make it kick in at exactly halfway down always. Times overall. I can spell. If we do that, then it's going to kick in for... So this might actually be getting me... I don't understand why this would work. Let's find out what it does. I don't understand why this would work. Doesn't seem to make any sense. I'm doing something wrong. But the important thing is, does it work? Because there's a follow-up to this, if it does. So this is us not changing a damn thing. So if we're at 44.1K, and we've just multiplied the value that we had coming in, that's multiplying by 1, 0.5. Now we do literal opposite. Because if this works, there's an obvious corollary to this. We're now at 192K. Where's our initial step in downres? Okay, that's not what I expected to happen at all. We're constantly making it so that the entire range of the control does bloody nothing. And I'm trying to do the literal opposite. Okay. And I'm going to move this very slightly and close it so that it will get out of my way better. So yeah, that's literally the opposite of what I wanted to happen. We can give this a try. This will clamp it. This will also let's just no, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So subtask here. Subtask is get it so that it does its first initial swap at 0.5. In other words, make these match. Make these match. Because what we're trying to do is get it so that the first increment of downsampling is at exactly 1. So if we were at 1x, we can guarantee that the first increment is at exactly 0.5. If we could make it so all of the other sample rates also had their first increment at 0.5, we can just multiply by 2 and we're there. We're not getting it. Here's where we came in. We came in with the 96K case, and technically, maybe I can help this to some extent by doing a sampling rate conversion I haven't done before. Let's do 88.2K. Oh, okay, didn't like that one bit. Oh, because I have to put a comma, not a period. Don't mind me. I'm dumb. I may be dumb, but I still get there. 88,200. Right. So here's where we speculate on where that first transition is going to land. Is it going to land at exactly 0.75? Because if that's the case, I might be on to some insights about what needs to happen with all of this to get it to do what I want. Let's find out. Now we're at 88.2K. I never do that, but we're doing it. I have rarely seen my converter light up that light, but we're about to find out. The converter is actually still doing 96. Up, that's position. Two x is clearly 2/3. I was expecting 0.75, but I'm not getting 0.75. I'm getting the threshold of the next one kicking in at 2/3. It goes from 1/2 to 2/3 to 3/4 and so on. Interesting. That's very interesting. Meaning several things, really. So that's important. We got some kind of interaction going on here. And we've got an overall scale that we can scale around. And then maybe we're looking at scaling everything again in another funny sort of way, and then clamping it to our clamp setting is enough to make it always max out at the degree that I want. But if this becomes larger, that forces all of this. Is it if it becomes larger, it forces all the settings up on the scale, or if it becomes smaller, it forces all the settings up on the scale? I feel like it's bound to be larger. Like right now, if we do 88 points, (44 times get sample rate, that makes it become 2. But our end result is 2/3. And we're trying to make 2/3 become 1. So let's do a little magnification factor. There. So now if we're at 88.2K, that number is exactly 2. If that number is exactly 2, then we multiply by 3 divided by 2. Let's run the math on the calculator a little bit. Three divided by 2 is 1.5. 1.5 times 0.66666, etc. got us our 1. Need a semicolon in there. Look at this mess. It's hilarious. Look at how silly this is. This is why AI doesn't do everything, is because, oh, I have another mistake. And I know why. Because I needed more parentheses. Technically, I don't think I need this enclosing a parenthesis. It's just that I feel like having the multiply and divide sitting there. I know it's going to do this before it does the times equals, but I don't trust it. But I should. It's just messy not to. If I was doing this in the Godot engine using JetBrains Writer would be very quick to tell me that I didn't need that parenthesis. But I do need it for this, because otherwise it won't do the add first. I think you got to parenthesize adds. Anyways, what do we got? We got a giant mess is what we've got. The question is, does it magically do the thing that I wanted to do in the first place? Let's start with the special case of 88.2K. Boom. So we started with it kicking in at exactly 2/3, and now we're adjusting that so that it's 2/3 actually become 1. Did I do it in the right direction, or did I do it in the wrong direction? Let's see. I did it in the wrong direction. I don't know how any of this is working. I don't know how any of this is working. I just know it's not. Already. Fine. Multiplying by this clearly was no bueno. It went in the opposite direction, so instead we divide by it. Although that makes no damn sense whatsoever. But it's the opposite of what we did. It went in the opposite direction, so therefore we try reversing the multiply into a divide and see what that does. I am not following what the hell this thing thinks it's doing. thing is, I don't have to follow it if I can make it do the right thing. But it is definitely brain melting trying to get through that. Let's see what we got now. It's not supposed to be doing this. That's the full scale. It's not doing the thing. Wild. We've translated it to a situation where it is definitely doing the thing. Not enough. It's not doing the thing enough, but it is doing the thing higher than it was before. So I went in the right direction somehow. Yeah, because remember how it needs to change over when it hits 1? This ain't that. Well, what if we reverse these terms? We've now reversed those terms. I'm really daunted as to what on earth it thinks it's doing. I know, I guess I wish you were able to help, but at the same time, I'm kind of encouraged at the obvious fact that nobody else does this. This is so far beyond what anybody else is doing that, like, no way I would ever be able to do it, because clearly nobody's done anything as dumb as this. Who would think to do it? Me, clearly, but who else? Still not at 1. Okay, that's much lower. That went the opposite direction again. What? Well, okay. Like the big win here would be is if I can dial this in to make it work and then switch it to 44.1K and have it still also work. That would be wild. So let's undo past the point of save. Okay. So that kind did something. Maybe I can work it out by first principles. I know I can't make it overall scale divided by get param c. Because that becomes 0 and you can't divide by 0. I also know I have my maximum clamp set correctly. Or at least I'm somewhat sure I do. Okay. So this scaling don't work. We were kind of in the zone there for a moment, but then it didn't work. How close were we? This little section of code is going to have overall scale written so many times. Oh my God. Maybe I needed to be doing square roots of overall scales or power factors of overall scales to get this to work. Here's where we were at. I'm not even going to bother downsampling it. I have a rough idea of where this goes. So this is the point that I need to move to 1 at all sample rates. All sample rates, it needs to have that be literally the 1 point. Let's see where we were at. With what we've got here, is this neatly lining up at 0.5? No. No, that's 2/3 again. And again, we got to scale it down to 0. If we do downres needs to be able to go down all the way. So effectively, the way this is being scaled, we need to be able to take it a little further. Do we have consistency? Is everything lining up in the same annoying place? Here's 192K. Does 192K also switch over at exactly 2/3? Nope, it's a lot higher. Yeah, 192K, it's 4x. That's close to 0.9 is where that one switches over. So we've successfully made 44.1K transition at 2/3 rather than 1/2. But our nearest down switch for this, although it is still fairly close to the top, is not literally at the top. Ugh. It's 3:59. You know what? I'm going to take a moment and play noises over the speakers in my screen. And I'll be right back. Yep, 0.666. It's the computer problem of the beast. No question about that. Yeah, man. I really am like Steely Dan's Deacon Blues. I play just what I feel. Unfortunately, this is what I feel. So enough with that for now. Now let's see whether we can get this silliness worked out. If I can do this, I'd like to apply it to literally all of the other reverb plugins coming up. It's going to be tedious to go through, but I can do it. But I got to get this part working. So let's space it out. Here's what we're currently calculating. Here's the adjustment I'm trying to apply to it. And if we do this, so maybe this is where things start getting more interesting. See, I know what the 44.1K state should be. In fact, I can even put it in. Let's see if we can get this to work properly at even one position ever. If we do this with no other corrections, what should happen is that the 44.1K will switch to only being max sample rate at 1. Let's test that assumption. If that works, we can go beyond there and see what else happens. Down res. Ah, but no. We did literally the opposite of what I thought was going to happen. I'm trying to double it and instead I halved it. Fascinating. Sure didn't like that. So, if downres get parameter times 2, then we get parameter divided by 2. Does that make it? It shouldn't. What do I think it is? Like, the idea of ever getting to where it's doing what I want seems fantabulous at this stage. But I love it when it does literally the opposite of what I intended. I don't understand how that works at all. Because literally this is all supposed to be at literal 1. We're running at 1. We should be able to tell the difference between the sound of upsampled and not upsampled. And is it simply that we are going between the edge of half-time and full-time? Is that it? That feels like half. And then the next step down is 6. Starting to look like I have half a clue as to what's going on. So divided by 2 is no bueno. Divided by 2 is the same as times 0.5. But that makes it so we cannot reach the setting we want. What's this number anyway? That is a factor of, because if we do that, so if we do times 0.5, that's the same as divided by 2. What that's done is make it so we cannot reach full speed at any time. But there's something about 0.5 that looks very familiar. It looks like what we have in this commented out section, except for we've got it backwards. That is the same as 0.5. It is 1 divided by 2. But what we're trying to do is get something a tiny bit larger, like 0.5001, makes it so as we hit 1, we snap to the next highest one. That is not dissimilar to doing overall scale divided by not quite 2. That makes it be slightly larger. So what then we're looking at is that. But first, we see what we get out of this. Which would make a kind of sense. Because that's what we're doing, is we're stepping down to the next closest divisor. At 44.1K, that is 0.5. So it's got to be just over 0.5, but not quite. And if that's true, then we'll make it so that we finally have it switching at literally 1. Because we took it to 0.5.1. First time I heard that happen. And this is what's supposed to happen from there on in. So logically, that means we can derive it this way. Let's throw more parens on it, just to make sure it's calculating everything correctly. This should do the same thing. And we get this other thing here clamping it so it doesn't actually go higher than that. Probably don't need that many 9s. We'll be listening closely for the sound of the full speed one. Finally is in fact what's going on here. Finally got it doing a thing. And I'm going to try to sync my ear to the apparent size of the room, knowing what I want to have happen. Here we are. That should be doing the same thing. At 1, same room size. But then, top speed one less. And then you scale from here, and there's a broader range of adjustment even at 44.1K. Full crank, one step down, and then progressively fewer. So, if we just jump to the other possible extreme, we're now at 192K. Will it still be doing the same small size, room size at 1? I think so. I feel like it could conceivably be one step off. 96. That's what I'd normally be running at anyway. What do we got? It might also be thrown slightly by the fact that I'm not doing exact multipliers, and let's test that assumption before I even do this. Our exact multiplier is 44.1K. So in theory, we're not wrong having it not want to kick in instantly. But we don't actually want to go to 192. We want to go to 176 to have it be an exact 4x multiplier. If we're at 192, either we're going to be one short or we're going to be one more. And I'm going to want it to manage this reasonably around that. But I feel like we're in the zone. $176. If I'm not mistaken, that is our exact 4x from 44.10. Got there. Alrighty. Next thing to check, 88.2. Boom. Exactly 2x. So I'm driving after something here. I want to know whether the 96K rate and the 192K rate failed to drop to the next stage down because you got to push it a little farther to get there, since it's not exactly a 4x of 44.1, or whether they are on the other side and are actually doing the next bit down and cannot get up to the full sample rate. And we're going to start by 88.2 here. Here's the sound of our hall at its normal size. And there is the change in pitch we get. So that's what it sounds like at its native size. Are we getting the same thing here? I feel like maybe nearest Dammit, that feels like about the same size. And then what's going to happen is you have to dial it back a little farther in order to hit the D-res. Or an enormous amount farther, maybe? Yeah, so I didn't really bargain on this. Still works, though. My hope was to be able to make that distinction. It does not appear to be calculating it in such a way that I get it. Instead, it's about 0.8, which is where the difference between those things is. I'd like to have this adjusted in such a way that it can tell whether it's at the multiplier of 44.1 or the multiplier of 48. I'd kind of like that. The clean multipliers are now working. I can demonstrate that by going to any multiplier of 44.1 and we get there. That's as designed. I think part of the trouble with this is that since we're doing this adjustment, since we're already doing that adjustment, getting to the nearest integer divisor of the sample rate is where the problem lies. I can make it so that, in fact, I can step these even farther away from the top, and maybe I should. Maybe that's how I should handle that. Ooh, yeah, I know. It's only about 420 or so, but some people will take that as a cue. But my taco's approach, and although I got bogged down in doing this, it's interesting because this is a problem I haven't faced before. And I like the idea of getting it absolutely nailed. So we're talking about a Bez fraction that is controlling this. At no point are we actually well, no, we are updating Bez trim, ain't we? We're doing this before we apply or reapply downres. So that's a weird ramification. So are you following? I've got it so I've roughed this in, but there is a compensation factor that needs to be applied to make it so that the offsets are able to reach when it's 96 or 192 or 48. I can run 48 and see that exactly the same thing will happen. In fact, I will, just to do. So this is what we're going to be faced with. If we run it on exactly this, we got a big change there. It's going to double size haul. In fact, you can hear the octave switch because I'm exactly doubling the size. Although if I continue, it's clearly not octaves anymore. But our first stage is octaves, and that's how we know whether it's going between 1 rate and 2 rate. 1, 2, and then like 3. So when we switch over to having it be 48K, I'll be able to immediately tell whether that is within my range. Also, this offers a 64K for some reason, and I have no idea why. So, what should be happening is that I'm still going to get an octave jump, but it's not going to be at exactly 1 anymore. It's going to be a little bit down from that. No, it's not. No, it is not. So that makes it more complicated, but maybe not as complicated as I think. What that is showing me is that it just switched from the maximum sample rate to literally a rate where I'm not getting that octave anymore. Meaning that running at 48K, we have already dropped to half speed automatically. That's not necessarily desirable, but there might just be something I can do about it, which is a bit of a hack. What if this? If we do this, then 44.1K is going to come out lower. But it's being clamped to 1 divided by 48. I guess we find out. Let's go and find out. Let's go and find out whether we just broke it again. Also, let's add this at decimal point. We'll be calculating from the 96 and the 48 and the 192, meaning that the other ones are going to be stepped down, at which point what's going to happen, and I do favor 96K for a base sample rate, so in some ways this pleases me, but in other ways I've got to find out whether it's behaving itself. What do we got? Let's set it to 48K. That's its 1x now. And that's octaves. That's definitely octaves. So if that works, then it should work exactly the same for higher sample rates. Actually, I don't even need to check because this is already 2x, meaning well, here's the catch. It transitions exactly at 1 now. Oh, I'm going to find out. This is no longer 2 to 1. This is the nearest adjacent one. But that's correct, because that if you're running at 4x and then you're taking the nearest available integer divisor, it's not going to be 2 against 1 anymore. It's going to be a larger one, meaning that you have a finer gradation between that and the next octave division. So effectively, running at higher sample rates, you have more spaces between the spaces available at 48. But now what we're going to do is we're going to see what happens at 44. This is what happens at 44. We've got our octave switch, just not quite in the same place anymore. I'm going to say that's got there. So here's the next experiment. This might be the final form of what I've been going after. In fact, it's so exciting that maybe what I'll do is I'll go off and have tacos immediately. It's been a weird week anyhow. And who says I can't go off and do that if I want? But first, we're going to do a little experiment at the 4x sample rate. At 192K, what's going to happen is this. Here's our native sound. But as soon as we drift it off of literally 1, which is the top rate, the instant it's no longer 1, it's going to drop down, but not an octave. It's going to drop down this tiniest amount, meaning that the apparent room size got larger by the ittiest bittiest amount. And the reason that happens is because we're running this thing at either 1x or some division of it. And if we're running at a high sample rate, the 1x scale is already divided by 4. We're running at 192K, meaning that what we're actually hearing to be the same size as it is at 44.1K is 0.25 speed. It's one sample in 4 being reverbed. And then the Bezier filter is doing the adjustment. So what we get by doing this way, with this down-res behavior, which is different from any previous behavior I've had, so I'm happy to have the new name. I knew I needed a new name for it. What's going to happen is we will have this sustainy sound, but then it's going to be a faintly deeper, faintly lower pitched noise. Because as this works properly, I'm finding it very complicated. I'm finding it deeply complicated, but I'm happy that I finally got to an end result. Done properly, this is a down res where at 1, it's always giving the same size of room. And as you lower it, you get access to progressively larger rooms by running it at a lower sample rate each time. But at high sample rates, running the same algorithm to get the same room size, because you're starting already at subdivisions of the speed that you're going, the amount of distinction between these sizes changes. Let me select a small bit that is not too noisy. Maximum regen. It's a sort of weird bassy tone, right? So that is a sustainy room sound. And now that sounds like it's a larger room. Space is bigger. And that is still a larger sound. I should pick a different sound. This is a dumb sound. How about extending this to this noise? There we go. So that's a big sounding hall, but then if we go up to 1, that is the 1.0 scale of the hall. And we just get to select larger and larger halls as we go down, all the way to... But these will also be available at 44.1K. You just don't get as many options of them. This is 192K. So we've got an enormously wide range of these options. Here's full size again. Tiny bit larger. Maybe a funny quality to it. You'll be picking these out by tone sometimes, maybe. That one sounds nice. And let's see if I can find that particular spot to select next time. Now we're gonna convert the sampling rate to 176. Here's the same thing. And here's the reverb. And at full crank. Very much the same kind of thing. But this time, it's not going to transition instantly upon me moving it away from 1. More like over here. So we've got different subdivisions of the sample rate to get there. Trying to see whether I can get an octave. Seems to still be basically working, although I find it a little weird, but maybe not all that weird, that I can't get clean subdivisions across the 46 and 48. But go all the way back to straight up 48K. And we get the same behavior we just saw with that, with one difference. Oh, hang on, I want to select the bit. Here we are again. But now when I move it slightly off of 1, we've got our octaves. And as we downsample, we start getting much larger spaces, just because that's about all you can do at 48. Octave, octave, and like a third. I think that's like a third and a fifth or something. Two octaves. Yeah, man. I do believe it got there. That was a journey. But I'm happy enough to bring this to all of the new plugins. We can put it right back to default 96K. And with this one, we've got the slightly undersampled reverb. And then if I take this one off of 0, off of 1, we're not going to get an octave drop. But we get the most adjacent downres. So if you're going for like a deep washy tone and you're like, I want this hall, but I want this hall to feel much larger, you go to your nearest available downsample. And you've just made it like a third bigger, and you can keep going. In fact, there's an octave there. So at 96K, unlike at 192 when you have a whole bunch of options, you got a little smaller. And then we got a nice double size right there at about 0.74. And then all the other settings are even more extreme undersamplings. But this is more or less designed for you at any sample rate that you're running at to give you all of the possible integer downsamplings in ways that are basically pretty approachable. I mean, technically I could fool with this even more to make the subtlety of getting to these, well, but if I did that, then the switch over from 1x would be farther over for 44 and 88 and 176. I'm going to call it for today. Maybe I will have done a bunch of this work, or maybe we'll just catch back up with it next week. We shall see. I've got lots to do, but then I've got lots to do with this dumpster nonsense and so on. So we do what we can. What I've done today is basically finish up DRes 4. And this, I feel, gives me my downres control. I think the downres control is ready to go. I feel like that is what it needed to be. It effectively takes like 2x and 4x and so on when we normally experience them at like 96K is more common, I think, than 88.2. but it gives us that adjustment of like at full crank, it's doing exactly the normal sound. I gotta make my camera not bounce around so much. That's going to be like next Wednesday, most likely. I think it's going to have to be next Wednesday. So I'll get some days to unwind a little bit before then. I'll get some days to unwind and build circuitry. I lie, I'm probably not going to be building circuitry right away. But I'm moving in the direction of all of those things. I'm seeing what I can do in all those directions, because the way you go is you just keep thinking of cool things to do and try to do them. I'm game. I'm even game when it takes literally all afternoon to do stuff like what I was doing today. Because it's neat that I got there. It's neat that I got there to the thing where it's like, this is the undersample control. This is the downres control. Crank it all the way up for normal. As soon as you pull it back, you're going to get into the undersamples, and you have a nice range of adjustment for where the undersamples go. It's better than the DRes control ever was. And all of its settings are nice. So with that, and I did not get an answer for, I'll pick something out. Maybe I'll give you a longhand. That might be fun. Anyways, talk to you later. Bye-bye.